Karibuni, everybody. Karibuni means welcome in Swahili, so welcome aboard. Asante Sana, word that means thank you in Swahili. Another word we say, Twende. That means let's go. And Jumbo, everybody, my name is Cameron. I'll be your safari guide today out there on the reserve. Before we head in, a few safety reminders for you. Just remain seated at all times. Keep those hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the vehicle. Hang on to those loose articles. It's going to be a bumpy ride out there. But we're going to hang tight here for just a second to get clear to enter in the reserve. In the meantime, you can look up above you, get a little teaser of what's to come, maybe even find your favorite animal you want to look out for. That is our animal spotting guide. Can't guarantee we'll see every single animal out there, but we're going to see tons of them out there, and that'll help us identify what you do see, as will I. Now we can head on into the Turi Forest. The forest has very dense, thick vegetation, so more shy, reclusive animals will call this place their home. They use their camouflage coats to blend in with their surroundings, so they can be pretty hard to spot. So you have to keep a sharp eye out and see what you can find.
That's for alligators right there. Alligators.
Now, looking to your right, you're looking at two okapis. Very shy animals. They weren't discovered until about 1901. But if you actually look to your left, you'll see nice and close is a saddle-billed stork. You see actually sitting down. When these birds do stand up, they're about 5 feet tall. They also have a wingspan of around 9 feet wide, which if you look up at the canopy of this truck is about how wide that wingspan is, about 9 feet. Now going back to those okapis on the right hand side, you see those black and white stripes. They're not related to zebras. Okapis are instead the only living relative to the giraffe. You can see pretty easily by looking at the head shape. You see it looks just like a giraffe's head because they have very similar skull structure, but they also share that really long prehensile tongue. And that tongue of theirs is long enough to lick the inside of their ear. Definitely proves useful. It can hear from about 2 miles away. Now, kind of hard to see, but hiding way back there is a black rhino. If you can catch a glimpse of it, black rhinos are around 3,000 pounds, so they don't have natural predators, but are sadly facing poaching. They're being poached very heavily for those horns they have. In fact, all species of rhinos are. But when it comes to black rhinos, there's only around 5,000 of them left in the world due to that poaching. And it definitely doesn't help their case that it can take them anywhere from 2.5 to 5 years just to reproduce. To your right, they're kind of hiding back there. You'll have to look closely. In fact, there's one standing up by that tree. Some bongo, nicknamed the ghosts of the forest, because they are so rarely seen out in the wild. As you can clearly tell, they hide back there. That bongo has slanted back horns, and that's useful for one main reason: navigating through the forest, helping them not get snagged on any bushes or branches. But coming up on the left side, these tan deer-looking animals are called greater kudu. You'll see 3 here. All 3 are females. And you can tell very easily because they just don't have horns. Only males can have horns. Now, when these greater kudu are fully grown, they're about 750 pounds. Now, as we make our way into Safi River, we'll have to keep our eyes peeled because lately there's been tons of hippo sightings in this area. So let's see if we're lucky enough to find some ourselves as we make our way through. In fact, if you peek over your right shoulder in the water, you'll see 2 Nile hippos in the water. Now, they spend a majority of their time in the water. They'll hold their breath for up to 8 minutes at a time. Now, hippos are also mainly nocturnal animals, so as you see, they're kind of sleeping, not quite ready for the day yet. And then also some pink-backed pelicans. They get that name from the pink strip that appears in between their wings during mating season. So you notice those hippos were sleeping underwater, and as I mentioned, they can hold their breath. Now, they don't have to wake up every 8 minutes to come up for air. They actually have a natural reflex that'll float them to the surface without them waking up, just like we're able to toss and turn in our sleep. But on the left-hand side, another look at some more hippos. This time, a bloat of hippos. That's what a group of them is called. So, looks like you got a good look at that one closest to us. Came up for air and went right back down, sleeping. Now, hippos are massive animals. They're around 5,500 pounds when they're fully grown and around 85 pounds when they're born. Now, despite that size, they can move fairly quickly through the water, but not done from swimming. Now, they can swim, but what they prefer to do instead is they'll sink down to the bottom and they'll run along the riverbed. And by doing so, they're able to move much, much quicker that way. They can also open their mouth around 180 degrees, and that's actually how they show dominance. The most dominant hippo will be the hippo that can open its mouth the widest. Now, left side coming up, Nile crocodiles, the largest species of crocodile in Africa. They'll reach up to 16 feet long, and they'll weigh up to 500 pounds. Now, they can also eat up to half their body weight in a single feeding, so when they're fully grown, they'll eat about 250 pounds at a time. since those crocodiles do eat so much at once, they don't have to eat every day. They only need to eat once a week or every other week. Now, in the wild, when food's much more scarce, they can also go up to months without eating. They're also notorious for having very powerful jaws, but interesting thing about that, when crocodiles will lay their eggs, they'll incubate the eggs in their mouth and they'll even gently roll them around in their mouth, which will chip away at the eggs, helping them hatch just a little bit easier. Baobab tree, native to Africa, also known as the upside down tree, looking like the roots are exposed up in the air. Now the reason it looks like that is just because it's leafless about 9 months out of the year. It also takes those trees quite a long time to grow. It took that one about 100 years just for it to get to the size we see it at now. As we make our way down this curve, you'll notice on the right-hand side a few giraffes. Those are called Maasai giraffes. The tallest animal in the world. Giraffes stand about 20 feet tall when they're fully grown and are about 6 feet tall when they're born. And it only takes giraffes about an hour to be able to stand up and walk on their own after being born. They may notice or may think what giraffes do all day, and that's just eating. They spend about 22 hours of their day eating. In fact, giraffes will only sleep about 30 minutes a day. And they will sleep standing up. They don't even sleep all 30 minutes at once. They'll doze off for about 5 minutes at a time throughout the day, equaling up to that 30 minutes. Now, if you look to your left, kind of hard to see it in there, but those are called African painted dogs. Painted dogs are one of the most successful hunters out there, being successful about 90% of the time they hunt. Now, for reference, since we all know 90% of lions and their reputation are only successful about 20% of the time. Now, some Hartman Mountain zebras coming up on the right side. You see the mom and the baby. Now, Hartman Mountain zebras are pretty distinguishable in two main reasons. Number one, you can actually see from here the hind legs. You'll see the stripes are much thicker than the rest of their body. But also, if you can get a glimpse at their necks, you'll see an extra flap of skin hanging down called a dewlap. They're the only species of zebra to have that. Now, hiding back there in the bushes is an eland. Kind of hard to tell. There's two actually, a male and a female. Eland are the largest of the antelope. They stand about 6 feet tall at the shoulder. Now, for reference, just how tall some of these animals are, if you look down at the ground, your eyesight's about 8 feet into the air. Now, they have a really long prehensile tongue, and hopefully they reach up high into those trees, just like we'll see this one doing. Now, that tongue of theirs is about 20 inches long, and for reference, if you look at your arm from your elbow to the tip of your fingers, it's about how long their tongue is. Yeah. Now, you also notice it's a kind of a blue-purple color. It's also covered in a thick mucus. The reason for that is actually to help their tongues not get sunburned, since they do eat so much throughout the day. Their tongue's out in the sun quite a lot. Now, some wildebeest on the right-hand side, living in pretty large herds, very densely packed herds, that is. And during the Great Migration, up to 1.5 million wildebeest will migrate together. Now, during that migration, since there is so many of them, they can kick up quite a large dust cloud. You can actually see that dust cloud from space that they kick up during migration. Now, usually migrating about 1,000 miles in a year, and pretty useful considering they can go about 5 days without a drop of water. Now, they're kind of hiding behind those bushes there, but there are some springbok. Those, if you do pop out, they're kind of the really small, more colored antelopes. In fact, there's one right here on the right. So springbok get that name because they can spring 6 feet straight up into the air. It's called pronking. Now, don't let the size of those springbok fool you, because they're one of the top 10 fastest animals in the world. They run about 50 miles an hour. In fact, pretty interesting about springbok is they can lift a pocket of skin on their back to release a pheromone, and it's been said that that pheromone actually smells like cotton candy. Reaching up into the tree as well. fact, a group of giraffes called a tower. Of course, helping them reach up into those trees is that really long neck of theirs. Well, interesting enough, that neck, we share the same amount of vertebrae as giraffes do. Now, the only difference is that one of their vertebrae is about the size of our whole neck. So just a little bit different. Now, sad news is they are struggling pretty heavily out in the wild, and unfortunately, there is less giraffe in the world than there is elephants. And coming up on the right, an African elephant. Largest land animal, weighing up to 15,000 pounds when fully grown. And they eat up to 300 pounds of food in a day. Now, if you look at the ear shapes, the ears are shaped like Africa, and that's actually one of the reasons they get the name African elephant, aside from the most obvious, being from Africa. They may also notice their ears were flapping back and forth. That's just cooling themselves off. Elephants will flap those ears and cool themselves off about 15 degrees. Well, good news is somehow we managed to make it across that, so I guess we can continue on and head a little bit deeper in the savannah and search for some more elephants. Now, as we do so, you'll see some red clay walls coming up on both sides of the truck, looking pretty hard like rocks, but they're not. These clay walls are actually pretty soft. You'll see on your right some test marks on the clay from elephants, doing that to break up the clay, and elephants also like to eat the red clay because it's like a natural multivitamin to them. Left. They are way in the back. There's some more elephants back there. Really, really far back there. I'll try to move a little bit closer. Now, when elephants are alone, it's typically males. And that's because, despite being social animals, when males turn about 15, they'll break off from the herd and go off on their own. Now, when it comes to females, they'll stay together in those herds for their whole life. In fact, a group of elephants called a memory. Well, good news for us, looks like one's kind of out in the open, so we get a pretty good glimpse of one. Now, elephants will throw sand and dirt on their back to act as like a natural sunscreen, so that's why their backs always look pretty dirty. Now moving along on the left side, greater flamingos coming up, the largest species of flamingo, and also the lightest pink in color. Now a group of flamingos is called the flamboyants, but when flamingos are hatchlings, instead of being called flamingos, they're called flamingets. Now if you look closely, the flamingo's legs bend the opposite way of ours. Well, looking about halfway down their leg, you're not looking at their knee, you're looking at their ankle, and that's why those legs bend like that. It's like looking to your left, laying underneath a palm tree there are some rhinos. Those are white rhinos. They weigh up to 5,000 pounds, but are still able to charge up to 35 miles an hour. They're pretty quick animals despite their size. Now, they can get spooked fairly easily, only because these rhinos can only see about 10 feet in front of them. Now, a group of rhinos is called a crasha. There we see the crasha white rhinos back there. Now, they get the name white rhino not from their white color. They're actually more gray. White's actually a mistranslation of vite. It means wide because of the wide-shaped mouth that they have to graze along the ground for food. Now, facing away from us is the baby rhino. Of course, doesn't look like it, but that's because they grow about 5 pounds in a day. And by the time those rhinos are about a year old, they're already close to 1,000 pounds. Now, you gotta look pretty closely. Off to the left, in the far right corner, in between these two trees, there's actually 2 cheetahs. You see, there's one out in the open, and if you look in the bushes in the back, there's also one laying back there. They blend in really, really well, and that's really useful for these cheetahs to help them hunt. Now, of course, the fastest animal in the world, reaching speeds of 60 miles an hour in just under 3 seconds. However, they can only last that speed for about a minute, and so they have to use camouflage, speed, and their eyesight, the good eyesight, to help them do their hunting. They'll actually hunt during the day, and what they do is they'll creep up on their prey and pounce on them, running those short bursts. That way they're a little bit more successful with their hunting. Tigers are nocturnal animals, so not necessarily common to see them at this time of day. You hear that?
Ostrich. Here, lion. Said lion.
Oh, that's just unfortunate timing. Well, at least you get a good to hear the lion's roar. That roar can be heard from close to 5 miles away. And I gotta say, I'm actually quite surprised he's actually roaring. They usually only do that early in the morning or late at night. So, pretty cool we at least heard, my friend.
Hello.
Now, of course, you see some ostriches approaching us on the right. Fastest land bird. They can run about 40 miles an hour despite only having those 2 legs. Now, they are flightless birds, but you may notice they have wings. But those wings are pretty useful for them, though, helping them turn while they're running. Pick a side. Uncalled for. Well, if you look to your right, you'll see some ostrich eggs also in the grass. What the heck is going on? So, ostrich eggs are about the size of 2 dozen chicken eggs. One of those eggs, that is, weighing about 3 pounds each. Also much stronger. A full-grown adult can stand on one of those eggs without it breaking. Now, making our way into the last stop of the reserve, Magadi Glen coming up, also our warden's post, and also shares space with Nigerian dwarf goats. Now, these goats do get that name because of their size. They're all full-grown adults. Now, this is a really good example of how humans and animals can work together. You see, the warden provides these goats with food and shelter, and they provide them with the sweet goat milk, and as an added bonus, they'll cut the grass for them. So, a really good win-win. Tons more animals to see out there. If you really like those dwarf goats, well, some good news for you. You can pet some of those goats. Now, to do so, you're going to take the train to Rafiki's Planet Watch, and once you're there, you'll find affection section, which is a petting zoo. So they'll have dwarf goats, pigs, donkeys, cows, sheep, regular-sized goats for you to pet and hang out with. Lots of fun. I always recommend it. Now, while you're over there, still things to do like the animation experience, so you can learn to draw. You can also learn a little bit how we take care of these animals by checking out our diet nutritional center and learning out how we feed the animals, and also our veterinarian center with a viewing window, a vet office, so if you're lucky, you might even get to see the animal getting some vet work done. So, saw tons of amazing animals out there, and unfortunately a majority of those animals are struggling out in the wild. Conservation wise, they all have their own story. And I encourage you to do a little bit of research if you'd like to learn more about how you can help these animals. And aside from poaching, the biggest issue is mining, especially in Africa. They're mining for what's called coltan. That's one of the main minerals that's used in the batteries of your electronics. So if you have any old cell phones, laptops, or tablets laying around at home, I encourage you to think about recycling them. That way we can hopefully cut back on the mining and hopefully restore the homes, and that way eventually these animals can go back to their natural habitats. What I like to say is kwaherini, because that means to go well. So kwaherini, everybody. Hopefully you all enjoyed yourselves out there today, and maybe even learned a thing or two, or at the very least, you saw your favorite animal. Once again, my name is Ben Cameron. It's been a pleasure to spend the last 20 minutes with you.